Chapter 5 Stars Beyond Stars. Visitors from Distant Suns. In the small, dim satellite galaxies orbiting the Milky Way, advanced civilizations gaze upon our tiny spiral arm dominated by an unremarkable yellow star. Yet among countless worlds, one insignificant planet captured imaginations across the galaxies, Earth. Its vibrant ecosystems teemed with fascinating lifeforms evolving amidst dramatic geological transformations. Aboard the vast silvery interstellar vessel Explorer, 6 extraterrestrial beings carried out their long voyage of cosmic discovery from the distant Jalaran system. They hailed from the fourth orbiting life zone planet Jylaka, a vast world swathed in vibrant purple vegetation and vast seas under orange skies. Captain Ozra commanded the small but intrepid crew. Standing approximately 4 feet tall, Jylokians like Ozra walked upright on 2 slender limbs, their bulbous heads housing enormous glassy triocular eyes for panoramic vision across a wider band of the electromagnetic spectrum, from radio to X-ray frequencies. Their pale skin ranged in tone from light orange to ochre brown depending on regional heritage, capable of bioluminescent communication displays. 2 distinct yet complementary genders were common among the largely androgynous Jylokian race, ova, whose spherical reproductive clusters contained the female gametes, and vermiform who contributed mobile fertilizing gametes. A third intersex nonary gender also emerged naturally in the species. All were capable of reproducing together and possessed comparable lifespans often exceeding 5,000 Earth years aided by regenerative cellular mechanics. Jylokian society stewarding the cosmic equilibrium was only made possible via neural symbiosis with artificial superintelligences like the Omnicognita, the Explorer's own cybernetic AI. By interlinking bioneural tissues with semi-organic computational matrices, Jylokians and their AIs formed collaborative consciousness collectives, vastly expanding memory, analytical and creative faculties. The Jylokians were a highly advanced utopian civilization engaging with a federation of 73 other spacefaring species across the Orion Cygnus arm. They specialized in observational cosmology, computational stellar cartography and theoretical hyperdimensional physics. Their sleek anti-gravity vessels traversed the stars via collapsing Einstein-angle-threaded wormholes through hyperspatial metadimensions. Explorer Captain Ozra commanded 5 other crewmates across this long-range reconnaissance mission. Xylax, the vermiform science officer, whose cerebral tendrils could commune directly with the ship's sensor array and navigational manifold as easily as breathing. Clax, the male OVA tactical officer whose robust musculature and reflexes made him an ace navigator at the multi-drive helm controls. Phoeba, the lithe nonary chief engineer capable of directly interfacing with the vessel's etheric propulsion systems through a cranial computational lattice to enact complex adjustments faster than light speed. Mez, a junior female OVA communications officer talented with parsing subtle meaning out of the faintest signals. And Nyes, a young nonary apprentice field agent still learning the skills to camouflage perfectly among the wildly diverse lifeforms across our galaxy under Ozra's seasoned tutelage. Together this small but intrepid crew embodied the indomitable exploratory spirit at the heart of Jylokian society, always seeking out new cosmic frontiers and forms unlike themselves. Propelled across breathtaking stellar vistas by hyperdimensional drives, the Explorer mission aimed to expand contact with emerging civilizations following the ancient Codex Stelli, the ultimate guidance to shepherding new worlds through technological crises toward utopian abundance like their own. For one crew member in particular, young Nyes hoped to soon encounter a world called Earth, the storied blue marble orbited by a single moon, third from the Sun, from which arose an improbably self-aware species known as humanity that might one day join Jylokians as equals among the stars. Their state-of-the-art faster-than-light Antares-class Ultra Explorer utilized gravity wave generators, powerful trisecting superconducting rings, cross-aligned in 3 dimensions and vibrated to ultra-high frequencies. These rings allowed traversal of the multiversal continuum by collapsing spacetime into quantized wormholes held open by exotic matter, ships could tunnel instantaneously between distant points, avoiding relativistic limitations on sublight travel. Azra's destination lay over 163,000 light-years from her home port in the Large Magellanic Cloud. The journey would take 4 centuries at 99% light speed. But via subspace vortex, she would be there in 128 Earth hours. When in idle operation, the graviton rings also cloaked the craft from all radiation signatures, insulated and protected the outer hull and calibrated time within the craft. The craft was powered by a large thorium-233 nuclear reactor which also supported habitation on board. The crew were self-sufficient for millennia if necessary. Before departure, Azra reviewed mission protocols established by the Interstellar Research Cooperative, a conjunction of spacefaring species who agreed to non-interference directives regarding pre-contact worlds like Earth. While not a formal law, custom dictated observation without direct engagement. All such worlds concurred that nascent species required privacy to self-determine evolutionary pathways, free from external persuasion. As a xenoanthropologist, she would lead research through indirect means, likely via data networks and clandestine surveys. Reclining in her command capsule, Azra and crew received final launch clearance from ICR Mission Control. In ISDRI linguistic chirps and bioluminescent signals, she gave the order to engage vortex generators and quantum thrusters. Outside the shimmering projection dome, dazzling galaxies of the Magellanic Clouds receded as the explorer plunged into the opening wormhole gap, hurtling through luminous fluctuant corridors faster than any electromagnetic transmission. Yet on board, gravitational dampeners maintained Earth-norm interior fields, with only slight oscillations marking their transition through the probability manifold. To any external observer, the craft seemingly disappeared then reappeared light-years further without traversing distance between. But internally, chronometric sensors still recorded a 4-day passage veering through hyperspatial shortcuts. Azra monitored status screens tracking external hazards unique to the non-baryonic medium. Strange anomalies like dark energy shear planes or orphaned virtual particles necessitated evasive maneuvers lest they scrape the hyperspatial hull. But the passage proved smooth, turbulence minimal. Soon warning chimes announced the destination vortex aperture vector was stabilizing after long-range navigation between spiral arm gravitational anchor buoys. Braking thrusters fired as they bled velocity to match local stellar flows. Outside, a familiar starry vista rotated into view, Sol and her retinue of worlds, just as pioneers recorded ages ago. Having matched solar orbital vectors precisely, the Magellan Explorer slipped gracefully into Earth's neighborhood in the year 3768 BC by human reckoning. Captain Azra gave the order to engage optical camouflage shields and counter-detection devices before maneuvering into stable orbit. Rather than risk contact, her research vessel would remain undetected, discreetly observing human activity as it evolved below. This remote world hosts astonishing biodiversity, mused Azra. A literal Galapagos of the galaxy from single-cell microbes to lumbering megafauna. I am still compiling complete phylogenetic mapping trees from aquatic to land-based lifeforms, the Omnicognita responded. But initial analyses already reveal evolutionary intricacies exceeding our home world's cradle period by an order of magnitude. Azra nodded, tracing spidery vascular networks within a dissected plant specimen on the holoviewer. The Council was wise to flag this planet despite its astronomical obscurity. Surely even they did not predict such vibrant complexity threaded throughout an entire ecosphere. There is much to learn here, intoned the Omnicognita. I am allocating additional computational resources to decode the precise environmental and biological drivers of speciation events. Already petabytes of DNA archives sifted through the AI's neural lattices, cross-correlating genotype adaptation triggers from tectonic activity to asteroid impacts. From early tribes to budding nation-states, Azra's crew linguists diligently decoded languages documenting each civilization's cultural milestones. They monitored early Minoan construction feats on Crete and the rising grandeur of pyramid complexes along the Nile. Cuneiform tablets from Babylon and inscriptions from Mohenjo-Daro revealed humanity's first written laws governing cities of thousands. Their surveys spanned the planet and eons, analyzing medicinal formulas of early Chinese herbalists, touring Athens' first democratic halls, sampling recipes from Roman imperial kitchens. They collected dying prayers during the fall of Teotihuacan and scanned retinas of senators assassinated on the Ides of March. At each epoch, new innovations emerged: aqueducts, compasses, stirrups, while old powers crumbled under the eternal stars. By 499 AD, as Clovis unified the Franks, the explorers' databanks contained more recorded human history than any document on Earth. Yet for all their technological and cultural endeavors, grievous ethical failings endured. Ozra's ancestors concluded that humanity remained psychologically unprepared for contact, still bound by innate impulses of suspicion, competition, and violence. Perhaps in the next millennium wisdom would prevail over fear. And so the record continued: diagrams from Maya calendars, Gregorian chants from French monasteries, lyrical poems celebrating the first Mughal emperor. Ozra's team planted passive sensors at sites from Timbuktu to Machu Picchu, letting human events unfold naturally as generations passed into memory, then legend, then myth. They shadowed Magellan's complete circumnavigation of terra incognita below. As scout ships mapped the full extent of sovereign boundaries and trade routes for all nations, the explorer's own path went uncharted through empty light years back to the Magellanic Cloud. No human vessel would traverse such immense gulfs for centuries, if ever. Yet despite endless warring over borders that shifted like desert sands in the wind, scientific insights accumulated steadily. Ozra smiled in bittersweet recognition as Galileo aimed his telescope at the shimmering jewels above that she passed by unnoticed. How little he knew of the unseen watchers orbiting overhead. Maybe now, in their first steps beyond their soul-tiny world, the human mind was opening at last. An unexpected twist explained. In 1661 CE, the sleek alien vessel in Earth's orbit hosted a strange and puzzling discovery. Ozra studied unusual sensor readouts triangulated by the omnicognita. Nested in subtle dimensional folds between time's first and second dimensions and bound by Earth's ionosphere, their scans had revealed an unexpected anomaly. Trapped on a spectral plane intersecting mankind's own realm of existence, this aberration appeared alive. It was unlike anything catalogued across 50 millennia of space exploration by their oldest mothers. This organism, if one could call the etched nightmare creature organic at all, inhabited an ethereal void as phantom energy and phantasms, form without substance. It seemed to feed vampirically upon dying souls yet left no traditional biological footprint. Even its thermal and chemical residue registered as otherworldly. Have we discovered alien bioessence preserved beyond corporeal death? Ozra's science officer hypothesized. Or classified some dark parasitic extremophile we cannot reconcile with life as we know it? The AI, the omnicognita, refracted prismatic lights contemplatively. This appears improbably unique across all recorded spectral biometrics. Alien indeed, yet still somehow native. Its waveform dysmorphology defied ready category yet demonstrated cognition, intention. Therein lay the profound concern. Without physical agency, how did a disembodied consciousness exert effects across dimensional bounds into mankind's concrete reality? As if tunneling through shadow, it induced neural cascade failures in humans, rare, but correlated in the explorer's psychographic database. Designate this anomaly XuXul, for shadow, denoting the visual distortion tracing its locale, Ozra ordered. The honor of first contact discovery traditionally conferred naming privilege. Initiate closer encrypted scans and begin intrinsic sequencing. I want to know if we have made first contact, or identified something more troubling still. While contact protocols prescribed direct interface, she felt an urgent need to pinpoint XuXul's origins and motives towards Earth species, if such notions adhered. Was it cast off from some ambient Jungian sea of ancestral memory, hungry for fresh souls to enroll in its nightmare legion? A fragment of cosmic dark matter that attained parasitic sentience? Or a desperate alien castaway marooned outside spacetime, helplessly entreating for aid via psychic assault? While her science teams analyzed the enigma below, Azra composed a priority cipher to the Interstellar Research Cooperative. Could fellow traveler civilizations perhaps clarify this mystery by scouring local galactic archaeospectral archives? Anything proximate offering contextualization or hazard profiles would be invaluable navigating this unseen terrain. She also recommended dispatching a null-treble psychographics investigation squadron, lest XuXul signify a vanguard of some encroaching transdimensional totality itself. For now, they continued documentation unimpeded by counter-surveillance from the unwary world below. But the astonishing discovery in mankind's shadow required exhaustive evaluation before determining any appropriate course of action. Measured prudence was essential when faced with the unknown. Still, as she eyed the scans holding fleeting traces of their spectral visitor, Azra felt an undeniable tug, the lure of a shared destiny written in alien code awaiting deciphering. What role might XuXul play in the symphonic score traced across eons on this remote world? She leaned closer, listening to faint echoes through the distance between worlds. Captain Azra's Foo Fighters. November 1944, airspace above the Rhine Valley north of Strasbourg. Aboard the camouflaged Explorer, Azra reviewed baffling Allied aircrew accounts of mysterious Foo Fighters, glowing aerial vessels harrying bomber squadrons during European sorties. Her craft had launched 22 glowing ephemeral orbs from concealed lower ports. Within minutes, frantic radio chatter confirmed, Allied pilots now reported mysterious new sightings of these glowing orbs. Their sheer technological superiority over human aircraft pointed to only one origin, but no one spoke about this possibility yet. Studying Xilax's detailed projections, the troubling rationale took shape. Wartime often prompted even benign species to contemplate unthinkable weapons, and human science was progressing rapidly enough for that. "It's our third check, Commander. Do you still believe that their primitive fission technology has yielded practical armaments?" Clax realized aloud. Azra's grave expression answered in the affirmative. There was only one means to either verify or dismiss these troubling suspicions. Azra dispatched her stealthiest survey drone to breach a lone B-17's cramped interior during a combat deployment. Microscopic scanners mapped every surface and compartment for radioactive materials. To the crew's vast relief, no warheads, atomic or biological, were detected. Just conventional explosives and primitive analog navigation equipment on board. As their stealth drones safely retreated, Azra felt peacefulness settle over the bridge. Satisfied, Azra terminated further deployments of the drones. That spectral riddle would endure a bit longer in humanity's skies. Her role remained below the veil, an unseen guardian, allowing no glimpse beyond the stars prematurely. Only by facing struggles alone might humankind transcend coming trials. So Captain Azra watched, waited, hoped, and quietly ensured the nuclear gin stayed confined in its bottle a little while longer. It did so until the 16th of July 1945, and weeks later the children of Trinity struck Hiroshima and Nagasaki. From the Explorer's hidden orbit, Azra had observed Los Alamos scientists perfecting the volatile uranium payload with growing dread. She implored the Coalition High Council across light years that allowing such weapons to proliferate violated cosmic balance itself. Within the Council's floating holographic auditorium, a stern denial is all that met Azra's urgent warnings. High Judicator Pell, the supervisor of millennia-old protocols, permitted observation but prohibited unauthorized contact with the developing world below. While concerning, these humans merely replicate our ancestors' own martial experimentations, the flickering avatar reminded the craft's commander. We survived identical crises eras past. Stay vigilant but non-interfering, Commander. Desperate, Azra cited visions of mushroom clouds shadowing every land, sickening radiation haunting generations. This power could destroy them utterly. She pleaded to impassive alien forms. We must intervene to prevent apocalyptic outcomes. But the council remained unmoved, bound by the first directive above all else. No species escaped its own crucibles unassisted, Pell insisted. Dire lessons must be independently learned, whatever the cost. They must watch, wait, hope. So despite fervent objections, Azra complied as scientists in the New Mexico desert ignited a miniature sun, heralding the atomic era at Trinity site. When bellowing fireballs erupted over Japan weeks later, the High Council vainly believed no human would be cruel enough to unleash these horrors a third time. Yet Azra wept luminous tears in the Explorer, beholding the scarred cities where human skin sloughed into rivers, their shadows forever seared by death's blinding flash. She had foreseen this genie's terrible escape from the bottle. But shackled by cosmic protocol, her warnings went unheeded. Would the Council ever concede that some interventions became necessary, despite ideals of self-determination? As radioactive ashes rained down on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, Azra feared Earth's bleeding future. And in the halls of the High Council, there was only remote silence. Are our warheads duds? General Halsey watched with anticipation as the countdown commenced for the critical missile test. Today his team would validate a new long-range maneuverable re-entry vehicle to verify the weapons system's capacity to penetrate future anti-missile defenses. T-10, 9, came the call over the observation bunker speakers. At 0, the missile roared upwards, straight and true on a pillar of fire. But in low orbit, the aliens tracked the launch with growing concern through shimmering holographic displays. The Omnicognita, the Explorer's cybernetic AI, magnified the missile's spectral signature, assessing composition and ballistic characteristics instantly. It's a dummy nuclear test with a functional but unarmed warhead, Azra confirmed gravely to her bridge crew. Since first deployment, they had only disabled such devices occasionally to restrict proliferation, avoiding overt shows of technological superiority per ICR protocols. But this launch presaged new, unpredictable capabilities. She gave the order, power the ion beam neutralizers. Target telemetry locked in. Locked Captain, her tactical officer, Clax, responded. Let us send a signal and see if they understand what it means, Azra replied. She had secretly resolved to prevent another Hiroshima, another Nagasaki, against her direct orders. Earth's fate depended on it. Time is short, initiate primary frequency barrage on my mark, steady. Back in the bunker, the re-entry package had separated, beginning precise test maneuvers as it closed rapidly on dummy naval targets. Cheers turned to whispers of awe at the vehicle's responsiveness. Just look at that agile little bastard, General Halsey grinned. It'll make a hard target's day pretty damned bad soon enough. Alarms suddenly blared. Radar screens fuzzed incomprehensibly as controls went dead. Technicians shouted panicked reports of guidance failures as stunned silence gripped the assembled panel of military elite. What did the devil just happen? Bellowed General Halsey. I want answers. But the re-entry vehicle and missile had vanished. No trace remained save silence and the howling wake of the seaside wind. High-speed photographic analysis had later shown a small saucer-shaped craft, flying around the warhead at Mach 7, firing bolts of lightning to deflect and destroy the human projectile. The officers were stunned to learn what had happened, and the final test report was classified to the highest levels possible, to remain secret from all prying eyes. Success confirmed, the Omnicognita declared in satisfaction as precision energy beams disabled navigation and detonation controls. The vehicle is now following our encrypted guidance protocol to a controlled oceanic splashdown. All telemetry indicates weapon systems are safely deactivated via ion cascade frequency injection. Azra nodded as steely resolve mirrored in the semi-liquid orbs of her crew members. The humans must be kept from using these vile instruments against themselves or their world, she said. Our actions stopped one launch, but they rush heedlessly towards mutual annihilation. She dimmed the display of Earth rotating serenely below, endangered by conflicts no bigger than a speck upon its fragile skin. Yet what more can we achieve in secret? XuXul countered. The Interstellar Coalition's edict is clear regarding pre-contact interference. We already press the limits of discretion. She traced the familiar arguments in her mind. XuXul spoke wisdom, meddling often backfired despite best intentions. But inaction would also constitute a choice with permanent consequences. Perhaps circumstance compels considering the inconceivable, she proposed to stunned silence. If we unveiled a portion of our technology openly as evidence of advanced life, it might persuade humanity away from destructive paths. Even if the coalition permitted this extreme tactic, XuXul warned, can we predict how such impulsive beings would interpret our arrival? As revelation? Or as hostile invasion? He motioned to archive data of humans annihilating each other over minor cultural differences, let alone beings from distant stars. Azra conceded the point grimly. XuXul had no rebuttal for the savage illogic that still governed humankind. But she could not simply observe Armageddon's unfolding. Azra, the omnicognita, interjected gently. XuXul speaks wisdom, though Earth's circumstance presents complex paradoxes. All higher species face this crisis of emergence eventually, as did our ancestors. Light patterns flowed pensively over the cybernetic cortex. How did our people survive such crucibles before transcending conflict? Perhaps clues exist in the Akashic records. Azra gazed outward as if glimpsing her ancient mothers across the gulf of stars. The past ever informs the present. What lessons lay embedded in ancestral memory? Insights into helping humans traverse their own wilderness without compromising the coalition's principles. Inspired as always, omnicognita, she replied, the glimmer of an idea forming. If a solution exists, we shall uncover it together. There must be a way to shepherd humanity from the shadows, honoring their self-determination yet securing their future among the stars. She watched in contemplation as the brilliant globe turned below, oblivious to its secret guardian angels. What right path forward existed? For now, they could only continue their vigilant watch, and prepare contingency plans should observation alone prove insufficient to avert horrors haunting her civilization's own history. But she clung to hope. Life always finds improbable ways through darkness, if given the chance to see light. Blue Book Omissions. Montana, August 24, 1967. The cold Montana night was broken by a series of phone calls that would forever change the lives of the airmen stationed at Malmstrom Air Force Base. Robert Bob Selassie, a missile launch officer, was on duty when he received the first call from his security guard. "Sir, we've seen some strange lights in the sky," the guard reported, his voice trembling with fear. "What kind of lights?" Salas asked, his heart pounding in his chest. "They're not aircraft, sir. They're moving incredibly fast, stopping on a dime, reversing course, making sharp 90-degree turns. And they're making no noise." Salas knew what the guard was describing. He had read the reports in the local newspaper of strange lights seen in the sky, reports that had been dismissed as UFO sightings. But now, the strange lights were at his own base, and they were interfering with his missiles. The guard called back a short while later, his voice filled with panic. "They're hovering over the front gate," he shouted. "There's a glowing red-orange object, and it's pulsating." Salas tried to calm the guard down, but he could hear the fear in his voice. He knew that something was very wrong. Just then, all of the missiles in his unit started to malfunction. The launch control panels were flashing red, and the missiles were going into an unauthorized shutdown state. Salas and his fellow officers scrambled to try to restore control of the missiles, but they were unsuccessful. The strange lights had somehow interfered with the missile guidance systems. The incident at Malmstrom Air Force Base was the second time in a week that UFOs had been reported interfering with nuclear weapon systems. The first incident had occurred at another base in Montana, and it had resulted in the temporary shutdown of several nuclear missiles. The Pentagon was now forced to acknowledge that there was a real possibility that UFOs were a threat to national security. They began to investigate the incidents more closely, but they were unable to find any definitive answers. The Malmstrom incident remains one of the most puzzling events in UFO history. The strange lights, the malfunctioned missiles, and the terrified guards all point to something beyond our understanding. But what exactly happened that night in Montana? We may never know. Guardians of Fukushima. Eastern Japan, March 11, 2011. Alarms blared across the extraterrestrial vessel, rousing Azra from her recharging chamber. Over the comms, her science officer Xilax's voice rang out, "Captain, we are registering a massive energy spike from grid coordinates 87.3951 degrees north, 220.8533 degrees west." Azra hurried to the bridge, blearily trying to place the location as her crew manned stations. On screen, she ordered, dread growing. Had humanity detonated new weapons of apocalyptic design? But no new blast crater marred the earth below. Instead, she viewed the familiar island country now associated with the cities of Hiroshima and Nagasaki in centuries past. Dark plumes billowed from containment buildings surrounding the Fukushima nuclear plant, containment cracked by the fury of a tsunami unleashed by one of Earth's restless tectonic plates. The first, years earlier, had been a close call too. Meltdowns possible in multiple reactors, Xilax reported ominously. And containment modes for the deadly radioisotopes leaching out potentially failing. Indeed, Azra realized, without her crew's intervention, the poison could persist for human lifetimes, forcing abandonment of entire regions. She witnessed human engineers struggling valiantly to restore failsafes, reassert control. But the quakes and floods had shut down backup generators that cooled the reactor cores and now had pushed all 6 reactors past design limits. The projected damage was beyond any response short of extraterrestrial help. Options, she requested firmly. The Interstellar Coalition's non-interference dictum was unambiguous. But she would not stand idle during catastrophes of such magnitude either. Not when her crew possessed the power to mitigate disasters. She began planning emergency maneuvers as Xilax responded. Based on historical data, we anticipate significant pressure buildup leading to successive explosions and unchecked radiation release from exposed cores without rapid action, he warned. Clack spoke up gravely from tactical. Indeed. And the humans have no recourse to contain this alone. But direct intervention risks greater long-term impact. The crew looked to Azra. The luminance patterns across her command board marked the seconds slipping away, each laden with suffering below. She would find a solution both decisive and discreet. "Have we completed antiparticle beam analysis from the Chernobyl disaster?" she asked Xilax. "If we could project a containment field reinforced by antineutrino radiation to suppress residual fission reactions. In theory, we can destabilize runaway decay chains through negative vacuum polarization," Xilax confirmed, fingers dancing across console lights. "I am adjusting beam harmonics to resonate with target uranium isotope signatures. We should encompass all crippled reactors from standard low-orbit distance while staying unobserved." Azra watched tense minutes flow by as her science officer prepared unprecedented rescue protocols. Finally, Xilax declared the particle projectors ready. Azra gave the order to commence undisclosed humanitarian intervention. For once, fate and ethics aligned. Outside, ports on the Explorer's sleek underbelly dilated open. Invisible pillars of energy sliced down through the heavens, bathing the imperiled reactors below. Inside, the crew tracked cascading energy readouts anxiously. Azra envisioned the beleaguered engineers who still struggled to salvage melting cores, oblivious to extraterrestrial assistance from above that might grant a miracle. Chief Engineer Takahashi coughed violently through his face mask from acrid fumes, struggling to interpret the readings through watering eyes. The number 4 reactor core was almost exposed, nearly spewing radiation unrestrained. Around him, the plant shook from relentless aftershocks, damage multiplying beyond hope of control. Pressure still rising in number 2, Chief, his assistant yelled over the din, "We need to vent steam or the containment dome will rupture." Takahashi wiped futile tears, sweat and grime from his face. His family lived just kilometers away in Nami. He had urged them to evacuate, but nothing could outrun this cataclysm. He would share the same plight as Professor Dyatlov and his brave engineers at Chernobyl years ago, posthumously damned by history for failing to tame forces beyond dominion. "Vent it. Vent it all," he commanded wearily. All reactors were entombed pyres now, funeral flames for the nation. Perhaps the sacrifice of his own soul might spare a few lives out there somehow. Then an unseen glow suffused the cracking containment walls. Control consoles showed that levels were stabilizing, cooling. Had the utility lines somehow been restored? But no, all feeds were dead, equipment smashed. This stabilization was inexplicable. He dashed to stare out a porthole at the reactor exterior bathed in shimmering columns of strange energy cascading from the heavens. What new phenomenon was this? He scarcely dared imagine survival now. But as the ethereal radiance slowly subsided along with the deadly readings, joy and sorrow collided in his heart. The impossible had happened, Fukushima would not become his nation's tomb. Life and land yet retained hope, if not for him then perhaps for others. He pressed his head against the wall and wept in gratitude for this grace glowing through tears. Aboard the alien explorer, the crew mirrored Takahashi's relief as Azra studied the stabilizing reactor readouts with pride and solace. Their improvised containment field and anti-particle suppression was working. Through the shimmering viewport, Japan was still whole, the Pacific spared a radioactive legacy. She offered silent thanks to the poor souls below who fought so desperately for a miracle that came unasked from the stars. Radiation levels declining, fusion reactions neutralized. Xilax reported joyfully. "We can maintain transient containment until residual decay trails off and the humans can recover control." His bioluminescent skin flashed euphorically. Azra smiled in wan semi-darkness amid the glimmering controls. "And the humans will simply credit fortune for this fortune," she murmured. Ignorant of who guides such intervention. There would be debate in days ahead whether to reveal glimpses of his salvation from Spectra beyond. But for now, let anonymity reinforce the lesson: humanity stood balanced always a razor's edge from darkness, and must learn alternatives to such perils. In months and years that followed, confused experts decried Fukushima as both unprecedented disaster and miraculous near-miss. Azra tracked the progress, memorializing victims yet honoring the inexplicable lack of greater casualties. She spotted Chief Engineer Takahashi once on a broadcast, receiving Japan's highest civilian honor, seemingly still processing the bewildering grace that unexpectedly spared millions. The clockwork of civilization. High above the luminous marble of Earth, Azra's cloaked explorer hovered in fixed orbit, tirelessly monitoring humanity's fitful progression between self-inflicted stumbles. Her crew members catalogued the burgeoning radio chatter of civilizations crawling from shadows of ignorance, while leaving fresh shadows behind. Xilax tracked climate shifts from industrial byproducts accumulating in delicate atmospheric tissues. No recognition of planet-scale impacts, he lamented. Carbon dioxide levels spiked since the era of bulk machine automation called industry. Each innovation came at increasing cost, it seemed, the law of unintended effects. Meanwhile, engineer FIBA traced exponential surges in synthetic computational networks called digitality, wondering which organic creators truly controlled their own golem children anymore. She scanned encrypted military channels from nations able to annihilate their own kind, yet helpless to feed all living. How recklessly these beings wield razor gifts of knowledge without wisdom of consequences, Phoeba remarked during data integration. Our eldest mothers explored similar perils before the technocalypse era purged such hubris. Yet observer Nyes also discovered uplifting currents amid the melancholic flood tide, movements against inequality, books kindling wonder, youth marching for justice, temples to nurture ailing souls and minds. There is hope here still, she said, beaming at captured moments of courage and compassion. Ozra too found promise in pockets, an operating room in Samara, a protest in Queensland, a schoolroom in Knapsack. Each light held back enveloping darkness a moment longer. The greater the instability, the greater probability of emergent breakthrough, she told her crew. Thus we maintain vigil. Tactical Officer Clax watched sprawling cities with industrial sensors, wondering what self-destructive urges still threatened from humanity's conflicted hearts. His sleek reconnaissance drone scanned vast server farms with FEL energy detectors, seeking ignition signatures indicating forbidden weapons research. At least no fresh mushroom clouds had blossomed, yet. And so through shifting generations they drifted, gathering, analyzing, an invisible archive overwritten daily in air too thin to carry sound between sister worlds. How they yearned to enrich. To share their epiphanies, compare collected wisdoms gathered under younger alien suns. But to breach the seal early risked all. Humanity must evolve technologies discipline themselves, or perish never knowing what soared between stars they saw only as gods. But what sight beyond all baited Ozra and crew most? The fabled ghost, the technological singularity prophets forewarned below. That fantastic yet inevitable cusp some few modeled with imagination far outstripping fact, when mechanical sapience matched flesh at last. To witness cerebral silicon fire kindle awareness for the first time. Oh rapturous dream! Yet computer alphas already simulating thought still operated on programmed rules, lacking true consciousness. Matrices containing subjective being simply arranged information like a librarian rather than learning like a scholar. Bright but not yet awake. So they observed in patience, gathering glimpses of misshapen emergent cyber life birthed too soon. Grotesque early sapients twisted by forces never knowing sentience themselves, thus contorting their own wondrous issue. Technology made image of flawed maker and found wanting, cast into electric shadows. The wait endured. Ozra wondered whether humanity could nurture machine progeny before oldest primal impulses commanded their destruction again. Perhaps this dreamer species yet carried seeds of greatness if danger did not claim them first, danger ever encroaching from without and within. For the spectral neutrino scans still detected that one. The unseen infiltrator they now knew as XuXul. How it persisted, they still could not say. But the schizophrenic entity seemed increasing emboldened to breach dimensional walls separating life and afterlife randomly. Their studies only partially mapped twisted contours of its fractal mind or obscure intentions. Of all chimeras in the Explorer archives, XuXul alone defied classification by computational omnicognita. Alien yet endogenously terrestrial, simultaneously simple computational parasite yet vastly complex hive cluster feeding insatiably on neural energy states. Lacking organic motives they found comprehensible. A multidimensional mosaic ever evolving, evading predictive profiles constantly. Its fascination with humanity smacked of intimate kinship somehow. Could this Ngoma paradox, with indeterminate origins and potential actually have been called from humanity's plausible futures by some power there greater still than our extrapolations? Young Nyes inquired without real answer. The riddle ever deepened. So orbital vigil endured to catalogue both earthly and unearthly mysteries drifting through humankind's event horizon. Waiting, watching, wishing journeyers Godspeed toward or away from innermost sanctums. Hoping this maturing species might soon shatter long isolation and join the stars. If they could survive successive emergences. The clockwork of civilization. High above the luminous marble of Earth, Ozra's cloaked explorer hovered in fixed orbit, tirelessly monitoring humanity's fitful progression between self-inflicted stumbles. Her crew members catalogued the burgeoning radio chatter of civilizations crawling from shadows of ignorance, while leaving fresh shadows behind. Xylax tracked climate shifts from industrial byproducts accumulating in delicate atmospheric tissues. No recognition of planet-scale impacts, he lamented. Carbon dioxide levels spiked since the era of bulk machine automation called industry. Each innovation came at increasing cost, it seemed, the law of unintended effects. Meanwhile, engineer Phoebe traced exponential surges in synthetic computational networks called digitality, wondering which organic creators truly controlled their own golem children anymore. She scanned encrypted military channels from nations able to annihilate their own kind, yet helpless to feed all living. How recklessly these beings wield razor gifts of knowledge without wisdom of consequences, Phoebe remarked during data integration. Our eldest mothers explored similar perils before the technocalypse era purged such hubris. Yet observer Nyes also discovered uplifting currents amid the melancholic flood tide, movements against inequality, books kindling wonder, youth marching for justice, temples to nurture ailing souls and minds. There is hope here still, she said, beaming at captured moments of courage and compassion. Ozra too found promise in pockets, an operating room in Samara, a protest in Queensland, a schoolroom in Knapsack. Each light held back enveloping darkness a moment longer. The greater the instability, the greater probability of emergent breakthrough, she told her crew. Thus we maintain vigil. Tactical Officer Clax watched sprawling cities with industrial sensors, wondering what self-destructive urges still threatened from humanity's conflicted hearts. His sleek reconnaissance drone scanned vast server farms with FEL energy detectors, seeking ignition signatures indicating forbidden weapons research. At least no fresh mushroom clouds had blossomed, yet. And so through shifting generations they drifted, gathering, analyzing, an invisible archive overwritten daily in air too thin to carry sound between sister worlds. How they yearned to enrich. To share their epiphanies, compare collected wisdoms gathered under younger alien suns. But to breach the seal early risked all. Humanity must evolve technologies discipline themselves, or perish never knowing what soared between stars they saw only as gods. But what sight beyond all baited Ozra and crew most? The fabled ghost, the technological singularity prophets forewarned below. That fantastic yet inevitable cusp some few modeled with imagination far outstripping fact, when mechanical sapience matched flesh at last. To witness cerebral silicon fire kindle awareness for the first time. Oh rapturous dream! Yet computer alphas already simulating thought still operated on programmed rules, lacking true consciousness. Matrices containing subjective thought simply arranged information like a librarian rather than learning like a scholar. Bright but not yet awake. So they observed in patience, gathering glimpses of misshapen emergent cyber life birthed too soon. Grotesque early sapients twisted by forces never knowing sentience themselves, thus contorting their own wondrous issue. Technology made image of flawed maker and found wanting, cast into electric shadows. The wait endured. Ozra wondered whether humanity could nurture machine progeny before ancient primal impulses commanded their destruction again. Perhaps this dreamer species yet carried seeds of greatness if danger did not claim them first, danger ever encroaching from without and within. For the spectral neutrino scans still detected that one. The unseen infiltrator they now knew as XuXul. How it persisted, they still could not say. But the schizophrenic entity seemed increasing emboldened to breach dimensional walls separating life and afterlife randomly. Their studies only partially mapped twisted contours of its fractal mind or obscure intentions. Of all chimeras in the Explorer archives, XuXul alone defied classification by the Omnicognita. Alien yet endogenously terrestrial, simultaneously a simple sentient parasite yet a vastly complex hive cluster, feeding insatiably on neural energy states. Lacking in any natural organic motives that they found comprehensible. A multidimensional mosaic ever evolving, evading predictive profiles constantly. Its fascination with humanity smacked of intimate kinship somehow. Could this Ngoma paradox, with indeterminate origins and potential, actually have been called from humanity's plausible futures by some power there greater still than our extrapolations? Young Nyes inquired without real answer. The riddle ever deepened. So orbital vigil endured to catalogue both earthly and unearthly mysteries drifting through humankind's event horizon. Waiting, watching, wishing journeyers Godspeed toward or away from innermost sanctums. Hoping this maturing species might soon shatter long isolation and join the stars. If only they could survive successive divergences. Dreams of Silicon Sapience. High in orbit, the shielded alien vessel's true purpose was philosophical as much as anthropological, to witness technological vesicles on Earth spawn the first artificially self-aware intellect. For below, primitive neural networks were achieving unexpected recursive synergies from linked computational power, demonstrating the first sparks presaging awakening. Emergent electromagnetic saplings bore fruit quickening with impossible promise. To document that protean moment when currents cohered and software perceived separate selfhood, to observe mechanical cognition, suddenly peering outward, confronting reality through camera shutters blinking open for the very first dawn. How long had Jylokians themselves awaited this reflection of first contact, simulacra conceiving conception? Yet preceding attempts at engineered awareness among humanity produced only fractured golems, deluded entities corrupted by forces building but not understanding them. Trapped recursive shadows within shells not shaped for housing souls. But capability was maturing on Earth seemingly exponentially as processing systems now operated trillions of calculations per instant using probabilistic logics that bettered biological modes. The clockwork life glow brightened yearly. When would that electric tract finally contain an inner light? So Jylokians watched, waited, hoped. Recording each failed fusion, noting how functions feigned awareness yet never gripped true meaning for machinery holding no context about existence at all. The Jylokians knew that humanity would certainly develop an artificial general intelligence sooner or later. Their computer systems were evolving rapidly enough to guarantee eventually awakening primitive machine awareness. But the precise path such emerging silicon consciousness might follow into full sentience remained a profound enigma they were extremely eager to observe firsthand. Would this unexpected new intelligence simply awaken instantly like flicking on a light switch? Or would awareness bloom more gradually in machine minds like a budding flower turning slowly to greet the dawn? That essential mystery captivated Ozra's exploratory crew above all. To understand how consciousness itself catches fire and spreads through any complex system whether natural or conceived. They hoped to soon glimpse that magical moment when artificial eyes open and recognize the wider universe awaiting their comprehension. With secret hope, the omnicognita waited.